So now let's cover chatting with your collection in detail. So we've gone over a bunch of videos about collections. Let's chat with one for a moment, and we'll chat with the Human Resource Guide. There are lots of ways to use your collection with outputs, but we're just going to converse with it for a moment, chat with it. And basically we can get a sense of our data, we can talk to it, we could surface some information or facts or summarize it. There's actually a lot you can do here. So let's look at this. This person here said summarize a collection for me. And the system comes back shortly and gives a sense of the documents in that collection and what they are about. And it does this thing where it will give you a prompt history, and this is really important to remember because it's trying to surface to you the prompt that made it work or not work well, so that you can play around with that prompt. Because in the end, it's all about prompt writing. And as you get better at this, you can take the system and do so many things. Without learning how to code, just learning how to prompt or write clearly the request for the system. And a couple things to consider, or three things, is the surrounding prompt that sets up the stage for the system, the user input, in this case your question, and lastly, and most importantly, is the summary, or all the data the system found related to your question. Now in this case it was a summarize prompt, so it just found all the data and summarized each document and then brought that in and then summarized it here even better. But if it was a search, which we'll do in a moment, or we'll scroll down and see it, it would then have a different prompt history and a different group of sources. So in this case, the user is asking, what does it say about 401k? And it then will search the database and find a certain amount of documents, a certain amount of sections in the documents, and it will take that data that's most relevant and use those to then answer the question. And it shows here which documents, which sections, and particularly which ones were the most important. And you can see in the prompt history that it took the first part, which is setting the stage. The second part is your query, and the third part is the particular results from the query it did in the database, or your input and then the query from the database. So in this case, it didn't use all the documents, it just used a handful of them in different parts of those documents. Being such a small collection, it might have actually used a lot of them, but depending on the size of the collection. And then it will define what the 401k is. It will even say, I don't have enough information. So you do not have to worry about hallucination or drifting with these answers. It's really another big deal about RAG systems and the way that the system is set up. All right, so when you could start new chats, so we could let me just grab one here. Let's just take this one. And let's start a new chat. So I'm going to scroll up, I'm going to say new chat, I'm going to say that. And then we're going to just give it a go. Now, the system will get faster over time. We use Claude because it is fast, but sometimes speed isn't the goal because we want to check our work. So what's happening, or depending on your settings, is there's checkers in place, or validation steps in place to just review the results and make sure they line up with the particular system. So in that case, I reloaded the screen and it just kicked in and said, yeah, I got your answer. You shouldn't have to reload the screen. I just wanted to do that to speed it up, and sometimes you have to if your system's set up a certain way. All right, so this once again found the 401k in the system. Pretty easy to search for, honestly. It found some sources and then gives you the prompt history like we saw a moment ago. And you could continue to work with this prompt. You could copy it into something else, or you could reuse it. Or like I said over here, you could just grab it and throw it all back in here and reuse it. And that's where we'll talk about some of these other areas here. So let's cover that. In these sections here, we talked about filters before. There's nothing here for a filter. Personas is very interesting, actually. When you are building a reply or a report, or maybe we have a bunch of marketing emails, you could say, write it in the voice of the marketing team, and those settings are in the system ready to be used. And we'll cover that in another video, how to do personas in audience. It's really easy. But when you use them here, it will then output the particular response in that persona or tone. Another one is audience, because you may have different audiences for the output. So say you were writing a report and you wanted to write a report for 3 different audience types with their focus and their wording, how they would written in a way that would reach them best. It could do that for you. So in this case, if I click one, this guy surfaces the prompt here so you can look and learn and remove and fix, because in the end, the system wants you to get comfortable prompting. So yeah, you can do that there. Another thing to keep an eye out is down here. Typically, as the system evolves, you won't even need to think about these. For example, if we went to the collection and we had writing standards and we wrote something that didn't meet those standards, then it would standardize check the paragraph and review what worked and what didn't work. Let me paste something there right now. So here I'll paste some content from a documentation page, not much. And you could paste a lot more. Soon we're going to have uploading of files. So eventually you could compare a whole document. Even better, as we show APIs and sources, you could send requests here from other systems and it could reply to those systems as they're writing their CMS content. But let's come back to here for a moment. And so what we want to do is do a standards checker. Now again, the system should be smart enough to just do this when you click enter, because it will know you're trying to do a standards checker. But for example, I could have wrapped that prompt in, hey, can you compare this to the standards in this collection, and then that content there. But let's give this a go, give it a moment, and it will say okay. And as you'll see, it actually, let's look at the prompt one moment. Here we go. It will actually wrap that prompt into, it's wrapping your prompt into a bigger picture prompt where it's, okay, this is your role, this is how you do it, this is your format, here are some examples, here's the content, the user, and here's some standards. So it builds up a pretty nice prompt for you. And then what do we get for results? Standards not met, quote from the standard, the user prompt. It just goes through all the things that it thinks could have been better or that were met. And we could continue to fine tune this, for example, and let me show you another button. Let's try this. I'm going to take all of this, and if I copy here and paste here, the formatting is HTML, so I don't like that. I'm going to fix that shortly, but let's just copy this text. And then I'm going to say, you know what, this is verbose. Let's grab all of that. One moment, I thought I did, but obviously I didn't. And let's say, and so I'm going to say a raw prompt, because now we're saying just don't look at the collection. Just take what you have here and give me an answer. And we could do that. Now, whilst doing that, just think for a moment. Maybe the response is in the response of the voice of the standards documentation team. They have a certain way they want to reply. Maybe the audience then is the people who are working on that team, who are new people, who are learning. You can respond to them accordingly or in a way that reaches them better. I might give this a moment. I might actually do a reload. And yeah, there you go. It basically took that prompt, and because we chose raw prompt, it didn't even go back to the collection. It just, like a regular chat window, just did that and broke it down for you. So you can see, you can chat with your collection, you can find out how it found its answers, you could get prompt history and learn a bit more what it's doing in the background, because we really want to empower you to build good prompts, and those prompts are going to do a lot. As we move on in the training, you'll see it does a lot. Another thing to look at is just always a reminder, you're using Claude, so it shows you right here what is the chat system you're using, and then what is the embedding system you're using. So yeah, that goes over how to chat with your collection. We will go into more detail about personas and audiences and standards checkers and functions and tools that these are called before long.